Ve İsrail buradan çıkacak gazla ilgili olarak Türkiye üzerinden bunun Avrupa'ya götürülmesi konusunda belli bir hedefe varılmıştı. Şu anda bunu yine gerçekleştirebiliriz. Şu anda Cumhurbaşkanı Sayın Herzog'la biliyorsunuz yapmakta olduğumuz görüşmeler var. Belki Sayın Herzog'un Türkiye'ye bir ziyareti olabilir. Ama bu arada Başbakan Sayın Bennett'in bu noktalarda yine olumlu bazı yaklaşımları var.
Everyone's surprised by Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan's comments about a possible visit by Israel's President Yitzhak Herzog to Turkey. His comments even have caught the Israelis off guard, who are scratching their heads thinking about the Sultan's motive. Is he serious?
Bakınız, sene 1947. Neredeyse burada İsrail yok gibi. Tamamı Filistin.
After slating Israel on the international stage for the past few years, Erdogan is now thinking about normalizing ties with Israel. The Turkish Foreign Minister Mevlut Cavasoglu even called his Israeli counterpart in order to ask about his health after the Israeli Foreign Minister's mother contracted corona and recovered from it. This was the first conversation between the two foreign ministers that was aimed at primarily courtesy. Time and time again in recent months, Erdogan and his entourage have sent public messages about their desire to restore relations with Israel. But so far, they've been met with skepticism from a political level. The Israelis can't even trust Erdogan. Question is Erdogan for real? Having reviewed a number of sources from Israel, the Israelis aren't ruling out the possibility of normalizing ties with Turkey. But even the apartheid state knows it ought to be slow and a calculated process. They fear Erdogan's fickle personality, his support for the Palestinians one day, an offer of friendship with the Israelis the next. It's left the apartheid entity extremely confused. All Erdogan is trying to do is to use Israel to improve Turkey's economic situation and strengthen its regional power, just like the way he uses mercenaries in the name of religion out in Libya and Syria. It's all business at the end of the day. The Turks are now working to advance relations with a number of countries across the region, and it's all happening due to the economic crisis in Turkey. Turkey has recently normalized ties with the United Arab Emirates, signed a few agreements to pull in investments from the UAE into Turkey, and of course the United Arab Emirates have recently normalized ties with Israel. So Erdogan sees a massive opportunity to be a part of a tripartite project where economic ties between Israel, Turkey and the United Arab Emirates can be strengthened. But who's going to be the winner here, folks? Israel, of course. Turkey will get closer to Israel. The United Arab Emirates is already close, and all parties will be happy, and nobody will be complaining, neither speaking up for the Palestinians. In the recent meeting in Ankara between Erdogan and Mohammed bin Zayed, it was agreed that the United Arab Emirates would invest around $10 billion in Turkey. Erdogan needs the money right now. He can't afford to make enemies, so normalization between Turkey and Israel is almost certain.
First of all, I would like to underline that Turkey should be considered as an important asset for the national security of the State of Israel. We did not sign a peace treaty in order to have proper relations with Turkey, and I believe that we should do everything in order to maintain these significant relations.
Relations between Turkey and Israel have mainly been known to decline in the last decade. Prior to that, Turkey and Israel were best friends. In May 2018, Turkey expelled and insulted the Israeli ambassador with security checks in protest of 61 Palestinians who lost their lives due to Israeli brutality. Also, the Turkish ambassador left Israel against the backdrop of this confrontation. The ambassadors have not returned since, but the level of relations between the two countries have not decreased. Israel is still the biggest trading partner of Turkey, and the trade just keeps rising. And that's why, my friends, there are no restrictions to re-establish relationships between Turkey and Israel. From the beginning of the Bennett-Lapid government in Israel, and even before that, Erdogan searched for ways to strengthen relations between Turkey and Israel. The arrest of spouses Natalie and Mordi Oknin last November provided an opportunity to break the ice. At the time, Bennett spoke for the first time with Erdogan and thanked him for his personal involvement in their release. It seems that Erdogan considers President Herzog the messiah to save Turkish and Israeli friendship. But the meeting between Erdogan and Herzog is still far from being verified. No date or place has been set. Israel is also worried that any normalization with Turkey may affect their warm relations with Greece and Cyprus, given the tensions between those countries and Turkey. Erdogan met with the members of the Alliance of Rabbis in Islamic States and made several gestures to Israel. At the meeting, he spoke out against anti-Semitism and said that Turkey-Israeli relations were vital for the security and stability of the region. All this shows us that Erdogan, the self-proclaimed Sultan of the Muslim world, is ready to put enmity behind when money is at stake.
It's a running joke here in Israel. Moses led the Jews through the desert for 40 years to the only place in the Middle East with no oil and no gas. So for all its 65 years, Israel's been almost totally dependent on fuel imports for energy. Costly and precarious for a nation surrounded by often hostile neighbors. But now that's all changing. Israel has at last discovered so much natural gas, it's heading towards energy independence, a gas exporter in just a few years.
Israel's natural gas reserves is estimated to be 800 billion cubic meters, with around 2.2 trillion cubic meters of gas awaiting discovery. Erdogan thinks he can help Israel supply gas to Europe and knock Russia out of the picture. Russia was the largest supplier of natural gas to the European Union, both in 2020 and the first semester of 2021. Erdogan's foreign policy up till the economic crisis has been based on portraying himself as a strongman figure, the saviour of Turkey, but today Erdogan and his ruling Justice and Development Party are less popular than ever among Turkish voters. It's easy to see why. Unemployment is high, inflation is skyrocketing, and the lira is weak and more volatile. And this has caused Erdogan to become desperate. It's why he met the United Arab Emirates. Despite speaking out against normalization between the United Arab Emirates and Israel, he's due to visit Saudi Arabia next month, despite criticizing Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman's moderate Islam. And now, folks, he's ready to establish friendly relations with Israel, all for the sake of holding on to power. If economic conditions worsen, Erdogan could be forced to hold early elections this year, but I also think snap elections risk plunging Turkey into absolute chaos and misery, and it will cause Turkey to drop out from the list of emerging markets. Over and out.
Cumhurbaşkanı Sayın Herzog'la biliyorsunuz yapmakta olduğumuz görüşmeler var. Belki Sayın Herzog'un Türkiye'ye bir ziyareti olabilir. Ama bu arada Başbakan Sayın Bennett'in bu noktalarda yine olumlu bazı yaklaşımları var.
С праздником вас! С Днем Великой Победы! Ура!